What's going on, guys? Welcome back. We've got something really fun planned today. I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a pumpkin bread that is a little different than your usual. It's going to be chocolate chip pumpkin bread, and it doesn't just end there. It's going to have a chocolate streusel topping as well. So if that sounds good to you, it really sounds good to me. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get into it. First things first, make sure you grab your food scale, because anytime we're baking, you really need to be as exact as possible. First, go in with 3 cups of all-purpose flour, or 390 grams. Next, you're going to take 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and add that to your flour. Following up next, you're going to go in with 2 teaspoons of baking powder, along with 2 teaspoons of baking soda as well. Now we're going to start adding our spices. So first up is 2½ teaspoons of cinnamon. Then we're going to go with 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1 teaspoon of ground cloves, 1½ teaspoons of ground nutmeg, and 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. All these measurements will be in the description, by the way. Now give everything a good whisk to combine. And then you can set this bowl to the side, because now we're going to work on our wet ingredients. In a second large bowl, notice mine is not very large. You're going to need quite a bit bigger than this, as we found out a little bit later. But add 4 whole eggs in. We're not separating whites and yolks at all, just add them right to the bowl. Next, we're going to go down with 1½ cups of vegetable oil. I'm not weighing the oil. And then we are going to once again start to use the food scale. We're going to add 1 full cup of granulated sugar, or 210 grams. Next, we're going to add 1 cup of packed brown sugar if you're just using measuring cups. If you have a food scale, it's going to be 220 grams of brown sugar. Next up, add 1 15-ounce can of pure pumpkin puree. Make sure it's not pumpkin pie filling, because that's going to throw off the whole taste of the dish. And then now that our wet ingredients are in a bowl, it's time to give Jackson a little treat. He really likes the pumpkin. It's kind of crazy. And the cat, Nala, he is extremely jealous anytime I give Jackson pumpkin, so now Nala also gets pumpkin. So now, as you can see, this bowl is way too full, but I did my best. We're gonna mix everything together. It took me quite a while, because I was trying not to spill too much, and I switched between a spoon and a whisk quite frequently, but we made it without too much spillage. So now we're gonna bring our dry ingredients back over, and then take our wet and combine them with our dry. Now we're gonna kind of, again, mix between a spoon and a whisk, just to try to get an even batter with no visible flour. As I was pouring it into the pans, you'll see a little bit later, there were a few spots of unmixed flour that I kind of just had to scoop out, because couldn't get it perfect. Even with this big bowl, it was just kind of difficult to get everything fully incorporated, but just use a bigger bowl. Be smarter than me. After battling with this batter for a little while, I settled on the whisk mostly, and it eventually got there to what a batter is supposed to actually look like. Now, this is kind of where the recipe can stop, or you can do what I'm doing, and you can add 2 full cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. And I highly recommend it, because it really does add another layer to the bread when it's all said and done. Fold those in, and then you're gonna reserve about 1/3 of that bag that I was using for something I'm gonna show you in just a minute. So now, grease your baking pan. This is going to be a double recipe, so you're going to actually have enough batter here for 2 full bread pans, but you'll see I did 1 loaf bread and then something a little bit different, because it's the Halloween special and we had to make it look a little different. So I put down a layer of parchment paper as well, you'll see, because that's going to help me pull the bread out when it's done baking and make cleanup way easier without destroying the loaf of bread. So pour your batter in, get it to about 3/4 of the way full. You don't want to go all the way to the rim because otherwise you're going to have pumpkin bread all over your oven. And now here's what I was talking about. I still have about half my batter left, and I'm taking these very festive skeleton skull molds and baking some skulls with the bread. It's really cool looking when they're done. Little speed up action going on just to get us through this. And now we're going to take this opportunity to start preheating our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now this is where you can actually become an overachiever and take this chocolate chip pumpkin bread to the absolute next level. And that is going to be with a salted chocolate streusel topping for your bread. So you're going to start with 1/2 cup or 60 grams of all-purpose flour. You're going to add 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar or 45 grams. Then 1.5 tablespoons or 11 grams of cocoa powder. And then 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, which is 4 grams. And then you're going to take probably 4.5 is what the recipe called for. I only added 4, I think it probably could have used a little more, but 4.5 to 5 tablespoons of cold unsalted butter, which is around 64 to 70 grams of butter. And then once you cube your butter like so, you're gonna add that to the bowl and then take the remainder of your semi-sweet chocolate chips and add them in as well. And then you'll see here that you really didn't need the bowl to begin with if you have the food processor. You can going to add all of your ingredients that we just mixed together into a food processor. And once we do that, we're going to pulse it probably 5 to 10 times just to get the butter broken down into kind of like small pebble-sized pieces. We don't want super gooey stuff here. We want the butter to still have a little bit of texture to it because that's going to help melt and kind of spread the streusel all over the bread when it's all said and done. And if we completely melt it and incorporate it to begin with, it's just not going to do the same thing. And we want a nice buttery, flaky kind of streusel on top. So this is what I found to be the best way to do it. So once that is all done, we can take it out of the food processor and see if you can see it here. I'm not sure if you can really see it in the video, but small pebble-sized pieces of butter. Take about half of your streusel, pour it on top of the first spread loaf pan. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And now we're going to move that one to the side, and we're going to take our festive bread mold pan and then add the rest of the streusel on top of each of the skulls. Again, doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't really matter. In this particular case, the skulls are actually going to be upside down with the streusel, so it's a lot less important with this, but I had the leftover, so I wanted to use it. So now they're going to go both into the oven at 350 degrees. Now, the actual skulls are a little bit of an outlier here. They took me about 45, or I take that back. They took me 55 minutes to cook the skulls. The bread loaf actually ended up taking me 70 minutes on 350 degrees, but really best thing to do is take your cake tester, stick it into the middle of the pan, and if it comes out clean after about 55 minutes, you're good to go. And if it's not ready at 55 minutes, I would put it back in the oven and check it every 5 minutes after. Now, let's cut into this bad boy. It looks so good, and this video just did not do it justice. Like, the overwhelming smell of this as I was taking it out and cutting it is just unreal. But before you cut it, I should have said, you want to let it cool to room temperature. I got overly excited and I started cutting into it way too early, and truthfully, you kind of lose some of the flavor. And the more you let it cool and develop and kind of melt together, the better the flavor is. And the day after I baked this was so much better than like directly out of the oven. I promise you, just wait an hour or two for it to be cold. All right guys, bread's been cooling for about an hour. It's still actually a little bit hot on the inside. It really should be kind of cooled to room temperature, but I'm excited to eat it. So we're gonna just try it, and you guys do better than me. Before I taste it, I'm gonna apologize for the noises you're about to hear because it's gonna get freaky. Without further ado, oh my God. Yeah, that's amazing. that streusel is something else. I promise you. You make this, you won't regret it. 10 out of 10, definitely making this again. So if you liked the video, I appreciate you guys watching. If you could leave a like and subscribe, that would help me out a ton. I would greatly appreciate it. And that's all for this one. So I'll see you on the next one. Peace.